This is Football at 4.
That's right, Football at 4. Welcome back to the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Ryan Rothstein alongside Nick Earnshaw riding shotgun with me here as we're live at Chickies and Pete's inside the Tropicana Casino. 2 hours down as we get to Football at 4, powered by Inside the Birds. And it's not Andrew today. He said, I'm not talking with these jokers. I'm not talking with Ryan and Nick. And Mosher was like, I know how to deal with Ryan. He's a clown, but I can get through this. I got through much worse with him. So Mosher has the duty today on this December 26th show. Mosh, man, I miss you. I hope you had a great holiday the past couple of days. What's happening, my friend?
Look at this motley crew. Nobody prepared me for this. I thoued it was just me and Hennig. Holy cow.
I know. It's the C team.
I might have told Pacheco he's on his own if I had known it were you two. No, I'm just kidding. I love you guys. Happy holidays to you guys. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. And then, of course, to the great listeners of 97.3 ESPN and our crossover Inside the Birds listeners as well. So hope you guys are having a good one.
Well said, my friend. All right, let's get into some Eagles talk here as Geoff Mosher joins us, host of Inside the Birds. Make sure you follow Inside the Birds at Inside Birds on X. Man, you know, we talked for the first hour in its entirety about, I think you could guess it, but Jalen Hurts, concussion protocol, and also how the Eagles should be handling this game and really the last two games. So give us your thoughts on how they should handle Jalen, right? Like, let's say he clears protocol tomorrow for whatever reason. I don't think he will, but he could. Let's say he does it. Are you saying roll him out there, or are you going to take the Joel Embiid approach and say, you know what, let's sit him out. We don't need him.
Yeah, so I'll give you not my opinion on this because everybody can have their own and it doesn't matter, but more so in these scenarios when I talk to people around the league, coaches, executives, they try to eliminate, Ryan and Nick, as much gray area as possible. Teams don't want to be liable for making decisions that seem altruistic, right? They want to make medically based decisions. They don't want bad PR. They don't want it to seem like they're doing something just to win a game at the expense of a player's health. And so that's why the NFL over the last few years has implemented that independent neurologist that you need to be cleared by before you're getting back on the field when you have a concussion. And so the way teams 99 out of 100 times will view this, Ryan. Now, the exception is if you're like the Chiefs and you've already locked up the number one seed. But in this situation where you still have a lot to compete for, if the player is medically cleared to play, he plays. There's no but, if, and, but, well, yeah, you know, no. He's medically cleared to play. Yeah. And the only thing that would prevent a team in this situation from playing is if the player said, I know I'm medically cleared, but I just don't feel right. And then at that point, you don't want to put a player who's reluctant or not feeling good or unsure of himself out on the field anyway. So it's pretty cut and dried in this situation. If he sees the neurologist clears him. The only question the Eagles have to ask themselves is, do we view Jalen Hurts as a player who doesn't need to practice throughout the week to get on the field? I think at this stage of his career and what he's earning in his paycheck, I believe the answer would be yes. They don't need to see him practice Monday through Saturday to get him on the field, as long as he's cleared to play.
Part two here. Are you concerned, and is there any concern coming off that loss? Right, I'll fill you in on how I viewed that loss against Washington. I said it's really their last measuring stick game of the season. So, yes, you have an opportunity to get a couple of wins here, even if, for whatever reason, there are some starters and key players that end up not playing against Dallas, against the New York Football Giants, right, Moshe? But still, there's plenty of concern. I think some of it's valid, some of it maybe not so much here from Eagles fans. I know Jason Avant on a recent episode sort of talked some fans off the ledge. So fill us in on that.
Yeah, I'm really not concerned, Ryan, and that's not my way of saying I think the Eagles are infallible or can't lose a game. I've always felt that they were, there's probably four teams in my mind that are probably really good shots to win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's everybody's four, right? In whatever order, it's Lions, it's Eagles, it's Bills, and it's Chiefs. And if you wanted to throw a 15, like a Vikings, or I won't argue you, but I also don't think there's any one of those teams that jump out to me that say this team cannot lose, right? So that's where I am with the Eagles, and I don't think one loss brought to light anything differently about the team. They've kind of struggled in low red zone passing downs all year long, but I would be willing to bet that the percentage of touchdowns scored when a team is inside your 5 is fairly high anyway. In other words, I don't think guys are just really beat badly. I think rub routes and things are really hard to defend, right? You saw the Commanders really execute really good schematic plays against what the Eagles are showing. Occasionally this year we've seen C.J. Gardner-Johnson targeted in man coverage down by the low red zone, but you're not going to overcome that at this point of the year. You're probably, if enough offense like the Chiefs or the Lions gets there, they're probably going to score against the 85 Bears, to be honest with you. So at that point, it doesn't really matter. I'm not concerned, but I would say this, and maybe you guys feel this way too, is that maybe the Eagles got a little bit of a taste of their own medicine against Washington in what it's really like to have to defend a quarterback who can bail out an offense from a bad play or a third down the way Jalen Hurts does to other teams. Daniels was banged up clearly in that first matchup. He didn't run the way he ran on Sunday. And so if they have to face each other in the first round of the playoffs and the Eagles defense is playing really well, but it's 3rd and 9 and a guy just makes a play, well, that's what the Eagles basically do to everybody every week. So that would be a little bit of a concern because really the only guy they faced like that this year was Lamar. And if you guys remember, Lamar after the game said his own mother cursed him out for not running in those situations more. But the Eagles really haven't had to face too many quarterbacks like that this year.
News broke earlier, Moshe, on the signing of quarterback Ian Book. Makes his return to the Eagles for stint number 2.
Championship.
That's it, man. I mean, I don't know what we're worried about, but what does that signing, what does that addition indicate, if anything at all? And talk about how this offense, this is almost a silly question, but I'll ask it. Talk about how this offense changes without Jalen Hurts potentially. Oh, yeah, a lot it changes, but what we could see, different potentially.
Yeah, so the signing of Book is basically you need 3 quarterbacks, and if you're down to Ian Book, you're toast anyway. But you still need a guy. Remember, this all sort of came back to light a couple of years ago in the Eagles NFC Championship game against the 49ers when Brock Purdy got hurt. They didn't have a third active quarterback or the emergency quarterback. They changed the rule to allow one, right? So it was basically Purdy, then Josh Johnson came in, he got hurt, then they had to go back to Purdy with no elbow to sit there and hand the ball off as they lost and got their teeth kicked in. So you need a third quarterback, and obviously Ian Book will be the emergency quarterback, and it will definitely be an emergency if he has to play in more ways than one. And as far as the offense, Ryan, obviously the run offense, and we went through this with Greg Cosell on Inside the Tape, which dropped this morning on Inside the Birds, was different. And the Commanders could flow to the ball a lot faster when they didn't have to worry about the quarterback being able to maneuver outside the pocket. So it does change something. Now, that doesn't mean that the Eagles should not be able to generate a run offense from here. It doesn't mean that the running ability of Jalen Hurts is the only reason why the Eagles have had a good running game all year long. So Kenny Pickett has a week here. They may have to do things like loosening up a defense by throwing on first down a little bit more, and you hope that Pickett is a little bit more accurate, a little more decisive than he was, which, getting thrown cold into a game like that is hard to be. And then you hope that the running game and the offensive line can pick up a little bit. If there's one little slight concern, Ryan, now that you say it, and this is something Greg Cosell talked about, was the Eagles' offensive line kind of got handled. And it wasn't just because the Commanders were bringing 7 and the Eagles only had 5, right? No, they got handled in the run game. They got handled in the physical blocking element of the game, which we almost never say. Even Lane Johnson had a few whiffs on his blocks, which is like a once a decade type of thing. So just you want to make sure going forward that those guys are picking up the pieces and getting themselves corrected and they don't make those mistakes against Dallas.
Mosher, I want to talk about the plan with Saquon Barkley heading into the final 2 games of the season. He's 268 yards away from the record. I know a lot of people want him to sit out that final game. Is there a benchmark, do you think, heading into this game and then into the Giants game where there's a possibility he could play in that final week?
I do, I don't know. You'd have to sort of be in the building. I suspect this, Nick. I think that, how many yards is he, 268?
268.
Dude, if he's close, they have to let him get it, right?
I would think, like, if you're 120 or fewer yards, you give him the first half to really break some big ones, but you get him out of there if there's any sign of, like, a hard hit or anything. You probably want to run the ball a lot anyway this week. So let's see. I think if he has a big game this week and it's, within reasonable striking distance, and by that for me is like 120 or fewer, you probably go for it. And then, of course, his counsel will be taken into impact, and I'm sure the offensive lines as well. But if it's something like, if he has 35 yards against the Cowboys and, they win the game anyway and you're like 2-something away from it, I don't really think that they're going to risk that.
248 for some reason. Sirianni throws him out there. He gets hurt. That's the obvious, like, frightening thing, though. Regardless of how close he is going into that game, knock on wood, can't even begin to imagine if he were to get hurt. I'd be the first to say, what are you doing? It's not worth it, after saying, go get it.
100%. You don't want to leave yourself open to that criticism or even that idea of that happening. That would be terrible if it happened. Ideally, he's like 50 to 60 yards away, and they give it to him on the first carry. And what the Giants do, which they won't, and they should because they're the ones that benefited from it. You get a whole like Brett Favre Strahan type thing where the Giants defense just parts itself, lets Saquon have it, and then they get him off there. But the Giants who are not already really happy, I'm sure, to see Saquon being an MVP candidate do that against them. I can't see the owner really signing off on that one.
Mosher, I want to get back to Kenny Pickett. It looks like it's probably going to be him on Sunday. I know he had the rib injury. What can we expect based upon last game, heading into this game, how much they'll let Pickett throw and then utilize Barkley?
Yeah, Nick, that's a fair question. And I think there were a lot of people who were really tough on Kenny Pickett coming out of that game. He lost them the game. So I went back and looked at certain quarterbacks and how they fared when they had to come in cold into a game. Like Nick Foles, when he had to come in for Carson Wentz that year in 2017. He was 6 of 10 for 42 yards, which is not exactly like lighting it up. 6 of 10 is nice, okay, but for 42, you're dumping it off, right? I looked at Jalen Hurts when he had to replace Carson Wentz in 2020, and he was like 4 of 15. So I looked at other quarterbacks. It's really hard to come into a divisional game in like 10-degree weather when you really haven't played all year long and just start flinging the ball all around. The bottom line is they scored 33 points. They did well enough on offense to win, and they had some really key drops. That doesn't mean, though, that Pickett played really well. So with a week of practice, Nick, and with this offensive line and those weapons, there's really no excuse for him to be lousy unless he's just a lousy quarterback, right? So he's got some image reparation that he needs to have done from his time in Pittsburgh and then I guess his short little stint here with the Eagles. He will have a great environment to do it. At home, a great offensive line, great weapons, best he's ever played with. And now it's kind of up to him. I know it's just a week of practice, but it should be enough for him to at least have a little bit better rhythm and ball placement than he had against the Commanders.
Talking with Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds for Football at 4 here. Moshe, I want to talk defense with you for a second because the defense got absolutely torched against Washington. They've been outstanding. It looks like, at least statistically, they are going to finish as the number 1 defense in the NFL regular season when this thing's all said and done in just a couple of games here. Outstanding. They're also the youngest defense in the entire NFL. Also the first time that they got torched in essentially 10 games. Are you confident that Vic Fangio can help pick them off the mat, so to speak, and sort of teach them what it's like to get put down on the mat late in the season and how to get up from something like that?
I would think so, Ryan. I mean, first of all, Cooper Rush is playing better since, again, that's another great example of a guy who is a backup, has had some decent success, right? But when he got thrown into a game for Dak Prescott earlier this year, it did not look very good. And then, of course, you had the Eagles the next week, and it didn't. But then all of a sudden, he's practicing and, getting his rhythm back, and he's starting to look like a better, more functional backup quarterback again. But the one thing you don't have to worry about him doing, Ryan, is on 4th and 11 is busting one up the middle and running for like 27 yards. Or the other thing you don't have to worry about is the throw that Daniels made to Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, that was an unbelievable. He had a free rusher barreling down on him, and he put it in the most perfect spot, 50 yards down the field from where he threw the ball. So Cooper Rush is a nice quarterback, but I haven't seen him do anything like that either. So I think the pieces sort of naturally get picked up for the Eagles anyway, going up against a Cowboys team that is very one-dimensional. They don't run the ball well. They have issues on the offensive line. CeedeeLamb's going to catch 16 passes, and they're probably going to be between 8 and 12 yards. He might get in the end zone. You'll give Ceedee his props and try to shut down everybody else. But what I'm saying, I didn't see anything in the Eagles defense, again, other than maybe low red zone, that I think, oh, man, now a team like Dallas can come and score 24 to 32 points on them.
We'll end with any key matchups. Just give us Geoff Mosher / Inside the Birds outlook on this matchup, right? Anything that I failed to ask you, anything that Nick failed to ask you as far as Eagles, Cowboys, and a prediction if you have one. You don't have to give a score. It's up to you, Moshe. Go ahead. You can take it.
Prediction. Pain. I think the things to watch are sort of, as you were alluding to, how do they pick up certain pieces? You want to see the offensive line reestablish itself after a pretty tough outing, especially against Micah Parsons. And I think also, and this goes back to your question about Vic Fangio, I thought the Eagles did not have a very good 4-man rush against the Commanders, and that's not a great Commanders offensive line. Thought Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, Jalen Hunt are high-effort players and high-energy players, but they didn't produce a whole lot of one-on-one wins and make Jaden Daniels. I mean, yes, he had to run, but not necessarily because they were just barreling down on him constantly. You would like to see against this Cowboys offensive line that has been besieged by injuries, you'd like to hear Nolan Smith's name and hear Josh Sweat's name and Jalen Hunt and maybe even Bryce Huff if he gets back onto the field. You'd like, that's going to be the bread and butter, right, for this team, along with how well the corners play. But it's got to start with the defensive line and the 4-man rush.
Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds joining us, filling in for Andrew DiCecco. Andrew, smart man, said, I'm not messing with that C team. Mosher, kind enough to give us his time here the day after Christmas. Make sure you're following Inside the Birds at Inside Birds. Make sure you're following Mosher at Geoff P. Mosher. Moshe, always love talking to you, man. Great catching up, and hope to do it again soon.
Fellas, enjoy the rest of the week, your holidays, everything, and hope your families are well, and we'll catch up again soon.